Alright, this is a quick demonstration to show you the answer of the assessment lesson. I have just downloaded the file and got it all unzipped. So we'll start with the first question. The first question has to do with commenting on the security of the virtual machine up to this point, up to the login part. So what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and start the virtual machine. And the way I start up the virtual machine is a little bit different from yours because I am using a Linux host operating system. But once the virtual machine starts, it should be all pretty much the same. So the first thing that we should notice is it does not ask us to enter a password to get into the system because the partition itself is not encrypted. So that's really the first thing to notice, is that the partition is not encrypted, and that's really a major security concern if you think that people may actually steal your hard drive or the whole computer, because without the encryption password, they can steal the computer, they can own the hardware, but they cannot get to the data of your system. So that's really a big step of securing your PC so that the data cannot be stolen. And that's the answer of this particular question. So if I want to type something here, I can just make it abbreviated as short as possible and just say the partition of this VM is not encrypted. Okay. And then the next question is using the virtual machine log on as root, assess the network security. Are there issues with the ports being listened? And then look up the protocols, and potentially also use Google to look up those particular protocols. I supply a link here as well, so we'll open it as a new tab. And let's switch back to the virtual machine here. Log in as root, and the password is 1234. And the command to do that is netstat -tlnp. That will display the port numbers instead of the port names. And here we have a whole bunch of port numbers. We have port 21, we have port 111, 512, 515, 513, and 514. And what we need to do is to look up these particular ports, and using our other tab we can go to those particular port numbers. The first one is port 21, so we'll look up port 21 here. Excuse me. Port 21 is a FTP protocol, which is insecure. We talked about that in the class already. Excuse me. Okay, the other part would be going to port 512. Remote process execution authentication performed using password and Linux login names. We have login, which is also called rlogin for remote login. And we also have shell, okay, cmd like exec, but automatic authentication is performed as for login server. Okay, so this may not show us a whole lot about the security concern of these ports. So the other thing we can do is to type in port 512. I think this is the remote login. I cannot remember, so let's go back and check. 512 is our exec, exec, and here we have a lot of articles regarding that security concern, and here's a good one. This one doesn't say how it is insecure, but it is one of the more insecure ports because the authentication is in plain text. So that's why we have to disable that. And what they are useful for, according to those web pages, if you read it, they're mostly for remotely logging in or remotely executing program on another computer. And because the authentication is in plain text, they are very insecure, because not only can people grab your password and your username, they can also go through those ports to remotely control your computer. So it's a double whammy in a way, and that's why we have to close those ports. So to answer, we can just say these ports allowed remote execution and login, but the protocols do not encrypt the username and password. As a result, they pose significant security concerns. Okay. Without uninstalling the respective packages, disable the insecure protocols. Make sure the procedure is persistent across reboots. Okay, there are several ways to do it. The first thing we have to do is to identify, how do we surface those particular ports. But you can see that 512, 513, 514, and also port 21, they are all implemented through inetd. So that means we can just go ahead and change the inetd configuration file, comment out those particular protocols. So we have shell that has to be commented out, login and exec, and make sure that those are all commented out. And to make this effective, you have to go to init.d and run openbsd inetd restart, and this complains that not starting Internet Super Server, no services enabled, and that's normal because those are the only services enabled. When we run netstat again, we will see that those ports are no longer getting listened, which is great. That's exactly what we want to do. However, this question also has a second part. So let's go ahead and take a look at the second part of this question. I'm having some difficulty here because it's not letting me move this screen to the background. Oh, there we go. Okay, I guess some parts of the keyboard still works, but I cannot get the keyboard to focus here anymore. They're always on the virtual machine. That can be a problem. Okay, let me see if I can do something about it. I can always power off the virtual machine and then start it up later. There we go. I still cannot get the cursor back onto the screen. That can be a problem, and I cannot click. Alright.